again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jim Cornette Experience, where today on the program, we're going to talk about what wrestler would I return to the WWE to manage? What did I think of the first NXT on USA? What do I think about their finally impeaching that orange fucking baboon? And what else will we talk about? Who the fuck knows? To join me here to do this, my cohort and co-host, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's the proprietor of the French Toast Chateau. His podcasts are big enough to cover the ground that they walk on. He's your friend and even his, the great Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again. And that's all I have.
Oh, for fuck's sake, you're already. It's this early, and I'm going to have to carry the whole fucking thing, right? Hook it up.
I love you doing Ernie Ladd. As soon as you did Ernie Ladd, you threw me off on whatever I was going to talk about because I get such a kick out of it. And the listeners do. We always get great feedback whenever you do your big cat impression.
Brian Last, you are stealing from the Jim Cornette Expense every time you cash your paycheck with responses like that. Responses like that. Every time you cash your paycheck, you are stealing from the Jim Cornette Expense. But anyway, let's start out the program real quick. This is not a bit. And Brian, you don't know this because I told you I only wanted to do it once. But I have to preface this by saying it's not a bit because then people will start giggling. This is for real. And I just found out about it here just a couple of days ago. So anyway, over the past few years, we've obviously made somewhat pseudo celebrities out of some of the fine folks at my post office, which is where I have most of my social interaction for the week, right, with people. And of course, the star of the show has been Susie. And I found out we went in first thing this week. You know, Susie had transferred from this location to another job, I think, out at the out at the main plant anyway, something that she had liked. And she had just actually emailed me Thursday night to say, boy, I miss you guys, you know, George, and nobody makes me laugh like you guys, and it's more boring here. Wish I hadn't have left. Anyway, we went in, I emailed her back, and we miss you too and everything. I didn't hear back from her over the weekend. Went in Monday, and she passed away last week in her sleep of a heart attack, apparently.
Oh, my God.
And everybody had just heard and you know, didn't know what to think because, I mean, it wasn't like she had been in ill health for any period of time. But anyway, so, you know, and I was just dumbfounded like you are. And you know, because no shit, I had more conversation with her over the past 2 years than with any other human being on the face of the earth, except for you. And that's just because of business and possibly Stacy, maybe not. I mean, stories about her little dog Biscuit, little 7-pound dog she'd play sick when Susie'd get ready for work in the morning, right? She'd act like she was sick so Susie wouldn't leave. Or, you know, talking about which one of her son's girlfriends that she liked or her daughter's new job or, you know, my stuff. And of course, I have to do a commentary on a lot of the other customers at the other windows, you know, to keep things lively. Not that they can hear, obviously, but it entertains the clerk I'm with. But anyway, you know, we did a lot of that stuff. And so anyway, I'm ashamed to say I have no idea what her last name was. Because we did, you know, it was always Susie. Well, there's Jim and it's Susie. Hey, Susie. But anyway, I'm sure her family does not listen to this program. But I wanted to make mention of that because so many people have mentioned Susie in tweets and she'd started listening. She started listening to the program there, here not long ago, but everybody has talked about her and heard her talked about. So I wanted to bring that up at the start of the program.
How old was she?
Like 53.
Oh my God.
You know, not old enough that you would think, well, you know, something's going to happen suddenly. So, but you never know. But anyway, so we will retire Susie as a character on the program. But she was a heck of a person. So we're going to miss her too. Everybody here at the post office also. I feel like I'm one of the employees. Because and George just retired Friday, or not retired. Well, I think he transferred to something else he's going to do for a few months before his retirement. So we're losing George there also, and but Bree is taking up the slack, and Liberty, he's a young man. We call him Lib. He's doing a fine job also. As a matter of fact, let's go to the shipping update. If you've ordered something, if you ordered a Behind the Curtain domestically, you've got it by now. You better have. If it's not my fault if you don't. If you've ordered anything domestically by September what was yesterday? September. Well, yesterday 24th. Was Wednesday, but that's today because we're taping. So 25th. If you've ordered by the 25th of September domestically, it's in the mail, or it will be in the mail tomorrow, Friday the 27th. And after a long, extended period, and I apologize, all the international Behind the Curtain orders are in the mail as of Friday the 27th also. We're doing 2-a-days over here. And not only now, there's 4 stations at the post office. I got a big post office out here, 4 whole windows. And the label printers on 2 of them have, for the past couple of weeks, have been jamming up like every 3rd package, and you got to take it out and clean it out and everything. So I got to stay away from those windows. So they put Bree on one of the windows that with the good printers, right? Because they know I'll be coming in. And then, poor thing, and it wasn't her fault. She, when you got the touch screen gimmick, yeah. And you sometimes you double tap something accidentally. She double tapped something accidentally day before yesterday, and on the internationals, and it could not get out of whatever it was to where I would have had to have paid after every international package before it would let her enter more. It was a clog up, and so we had to cease fire on that day and make up for it with 2-a-days ever since. But anyway.
I understand your situation's a little different because of the way, you go there with a lot of stuff to mail. But when you're there, do the people you're dealing with ever seem like they're battling with the scale to weigh things so that...
No. The
people in my place,
I've
seen them destroy, I've seen them punch the scale, I've seen them rip it up, I've seen battles with the scales there.
Let me knock on wood. The scale is the one piece of machinery, and they do roll their eyes when you ask them, are they going to send anything new? And they'll go, and then they'll say, well, it's new to us, right? It's something they've reconditioned from Poughkeepsie or something. But the scale is the only thing that has not gone wrong in my experience.
I'm not saying it went wrong. They know it's wrong, but to get it right, they beat the crap out of it and then yell at it.
Well, see, once again, your post office is in New Jersey. You Yankees up there, you intolerant Yankees with your constant clamor and confusion up there and all the chaos that goes on in the Northeast. I'm sure they're probably slapping a scale around and cussing people. Like, hey, what do you want? And what the fuck did you come here for? But no, my post office is down south here in the friendly bluegrass state of Kentucky, and they say things like, may we help the next guest, please? Or, Jim, would you like help with the door? Things like that. They're very gentle with the equipment, too.
I just love the dichotomy of, like, Jim Cornette, the opinionated, sometimes angry guy, versus Jim Cornette, the Southern gentleman who enjoys Southern culture and Southern manners.
Yes. And I've remarked to Bree this morning how we had the other day with the equipment problem, and there was a line out the door, and I actually heard somebody at the window over to my left was going, well, my mailman was an asshole when I asked him about it, this woman, and I want to see a supervisor. And of course, the supervisor don't want to come out and deal with that. So he's wandering around, and finally John gets him to go out there. And it was off. The whole day was off. And today I said, we got the vibe. Our vibe is here. Our mojo is here. There was nobody in line. I walked in. It was empty. Then a few people came in. Lib came right up, opened up another window. Stevenman was in there. Everybody was happy, friendly. Mr. Mahoney, the old gentleman, he comes in twice a week to pick his mail up. He's 89.
Is Bree like when Woody replaced Coach on Cheers?
What do you mean she's a fucking pothead? What are you talking? What?
That wasn't what I meant. On the show, he wasn't a pothead, was he?
Oh, it was just Woody Harrelson. So I just figured that's what he's been known for. But anyway, no, she's doing fine. The series will not be canceled. Post Office will not be canceled. She has filled the filled the role. You know, it's like it's not even like when they changed the on the Jeffersons when the fucking kid was changed. What was his name? Lionel. I was going to say Lamont, but that was another show. And we're getting desperately close to being called a racist here too, just because I used to like to watch Sanford and Son in good times. But anyway, where were we going with that? Anyway, all the stuff is in the mail, folks. And by the way, John the Hunchback is still there for anybody asking, but today's his day off. And they're doing fine at the post office, and we have good vibes here, and we're friendly. And you know, that's the way it ought to be. Good social interaction.
All right, now you have to do this.
Do what?
This. The opposite of good social interaction.
Oh, this program?
That's right.
No, we have great social interaction with people on this program. All the Cult of Cornette members out there, they love listening to the show. They'll love the new items at Cornette's Collectibles, by the way, coming up in October that I'm not going to mention now because I don't want to start another panic. But I do want to mention, we do have a brief update before we talk about our new schedule. Everybody's been asking, what's the update on, it sounds like a 50s doo-wop group, Grover and the Intellectual Property Interlopers.
It does.
I'm not allowed to reveal yet exactly what manner of doom, gloom, and misery is fixed to come down on these morons. But by next week's program, we are scheduled to have an update from our legal beagle himself, the king of torts, the intellectual interrogator. Remember the cerebral assassin? It's going to be intellectual interrogator Stephen P. New of New Law Office, 888-692-8084, newlawoffice.com. Will have an update for us on the situation with these people trying to steal. It basically, let's just come out. It's theft. Let's call it what it is. Steal my name, steal my likeness because I'm popular, because I'm over, because I'm successful, and market it to line their grubby, greasy, grimy, thieving pockets. But no more will that happen because the hammer of justice is fixing to come down. You know what Grover's going to be singing after Stephen P. New gets finished with him? Gloom, despair, and agony, oh me, deep, dark depression, excessive misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Gloom, despair, and agony, oh me. That is the theme song, ladies and gentlemen, of the people that try to cross Stephen P. New. The man who takes on everybody from the big corporations to the little local weasels that try to steal from you, try to stick their hands in your pockets and take what's yours. Stephen P. New can get you right with the legal system and with justice. Stephen P. New, the man who just takes up and strikes up for the little guy. And I'd remember the words to that song, Grover, if I were you, because you don't have any clue. You know, when you're a little pissant, Brian, when you're a little pissant, you got no body weight, you got no force, no power in the world. You're just a little small little creature running along. You need to mind your own business, because when you go up against an elephant, when you go up against that 800-pound elephant in the room that knows everything there is to know about the legal system like Stephen P. New, what does that elephant have to do? He just has to take his hoof or his snout, trunk, and he just has to go. And that old pissant, you know what the last thing that goes through a fly's mind when he hits the windshield is? His ass. And that's exactly what Stephen P. New does to little pissants that try to appropriate other people's names and likeness and not even give the money to charity, but instead just line their own grubby pockets.
That's what he does to big companies. Imagine what he's going to do to a pissant.
He don't have a pissant's chance. So nice knowing you, Grover. We'll see you on the breadline soon. Anyway, should we tell him our new schedule?
Yes, I think we must.
This coming week, because of course I'm going to be in Atlanta for the big studio wrestling tapings from the NWA. So this coming week, Monday, September 30th, the drive-through will be a special on the bus edition. What are we taking the bus to this week?
It is going to be, considering what we're about to see, the beginning of the Wednesday Night Wars. It's going to be Jim Cornette All In to All Out Omnibus. A year of you talking about All Elite and all the behind the scenes of All Elite and the reviews of the pay-per-views. I guess even before it was AEW when it was All In. But 1 year of you looking at the elite wrestlers as they were.
So just in one program, everything that I've ever said that could piss anybody off as much as possible, compiled right in one program.
Yes, but you're now doing what a lot of other people do. There's also a lot of positives in there, a lot of things that you actually did like when you watched.
No, but that pissed people off too, because I didn't either say it the right way or they just didn't listen anyway.
That's true. That is true. You can't make everyone happy, or sometimes anyone happy.
You can make some people happy all the time, and you can make all the people happy some of the time, but some of these motherfuckers, you can't make them happy any of the time. So, as my mother used to say, he would complain if you hung him with a brand new rope. But anyway, in that one program, everything I've ever said about All In, All Out, All Elite, the good, the bad, the ugly, maybe Tony Khan ought to sit down with a notepad for a few hours. That will be this coming Monday, and then we will be regular with the drive-through thereafter because I'm never leaving home again.
He's too busy on Twitter.
Well, that's true. And next, oh, that's a good one for those in the. And next week, the Jim Cornette Experience. This program is going to change schedules for 1 month because we realized that we normally record on Wednesday and we drop, as they say, on Thursday, but that would put us a week behind on covering this cutthroat pack of wild dogs fighting and scratching and clawing at each other Wednesday night war that we're about to experience. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give both these programs 1 month to hook us and make us think that this is a dogfight and that this is interesting and that this is something we got to spend our time on. And we will discuss same every week. Of course, we'll continue to discuss other things as well. It's not going to be that's not going to be the whole program every week. But for the sake of being able to watch both shows and compare and contrast them, we will begin taping on Thursday and airing on Friday for the month of October. Is this correct?
That is correct. It's not going to be the only thing we cover on those shows. We're still going to talk about everything else, but
I just said that.
For 1 month, we're going to cover the Wednesday Night Wars. Every Friday, the show will debut. And then What about after the month, Jim? I mean, any thoughts?
Well, if it's a horse race and it's fun and we've actually enjoyed ourselves, then I guess we could continue. But if not, we might have to go back to Thursdays just because at that point, I will either give a fuck or not.
Have you yet decided what you're going to watch live? Are you going to watch either one of them live, or are you going to tape both and watch at your own pleasure?
Well, with pleasure, I don't know if I'd go that far out on a limb. I don't know which one I'm going to watch live, but here's the thing. It's still a tight turnaround because, Wednesday, if you watch one live, and they're both going to be 2 hours. We can't just have an hour wrestling program anymore. So we're going to have to do that in the morning so that we get the afternoon taping in so that we can turn it around. So it's going to be quick, but I don't know what I'm watching live.
All right.
I have no idea. I've probably anything that doesn't have a guy sticking his hands in his pockets on the program. That's what I'll probably watch first. So, that's an indication.
But that's one of the questions, though. If like Kenny Omega or Pockets or someone that you have notedly talked about having a real problem with are on AEW, do you automatically switch to the other channel, or do you see it so that you can critique it? So you could say, these guys are idiots because of this, or, well, he actually did something right, but he's still an idiot. Like, how do you handle that situation?
Well, no, I'm not going to switch because that's just stupid. If you have even people who switched back and forth during the Monday Night Wars, if you have a goddamn VCR, which everybody did at that point in time, tape one show and watch the other fucking show, or just pick a show to watch. Don't switch back and forth because then you miss shit and you can't keep track. And that's probably one of the reasons why the people remember the Monday Night Wars, now that I think about it, so fondly, is because with all the stupid shit-stained segments that just insulted people, they switched over to the other fucking program. And then they did something stupid that would pitch them back the other way, so they tuned out on a lot of the stupid stuff and just remember the good stuff. That's what one program hopefully will do more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. But no, whatever I watch, I'm going to watch it all the way through. I would not switch back and forth. That's dumb.
Okay, so you're not going to just automatically fast forward then, I should say. through something with Pockets or Kenny Omega?
Only if I'm running late.
Okay.
Because if they do something really bad, I want to be able to make fun of them, and I run the risk of missing that too, see? So, but for the good of the entire program, I may skip through some stuff. Anyway, but Fridays is going to be the experience in the month of October, and then we'll see how it goes. All right. I'm a little peeved at you because it's been several weeks now, and I've not yet won $100,000. I've had to make it on my own, and I barely made six figures in the last month. So I'm pissed because I've been telling you that we were going to win this $100,000 from my bookie. And so far I said, I'll put up the $100 because that's all it takes is $100 to get the chance to win the 100,000. And you were supposed to place the bet because you know the internet. And you have not done that. You have not yet placed the bet.
First of all, I think this is completely unfair. If I look back at Jim Cornette as an executive, it was always the same thing. It was always, he wants to put his hands in everything. He wants to write the programs. He wants to cut the TV. He wants to be in charge of the TV. He wants to do everything. He doesn't want to let go of everything. He's a control freak. Smoky Mountain, OVW. Now all of a sudden it's, I want to win all this money. You do it. You take care of it. I don't want anything to do with this.
No, I didn't say that. I was putting up the money. For once, everybody said you should delegate more. So for once, I delegate. I'll put up the money. It's my money. You put up your expertise on the internet and get on here and win us this $100,000 because that's what it says. My bookie is the place to bet on football every weekend. I'm reading this. It's written down. They have better bonuses and more prop bets than any other sports book. And this year they're hosting the first online handicapping super contest where first place is guaranteed to win at least $100,000. And it only costs $100,000 or $100,000. It only costs $100 to enter. That's like the Ric Flair lottery ticket when he sponsored the lottery in North Carolina. A lot of the boys said every ticket is guaranteed to win $10,000, but they cost $11,000 apiece. But anyway, when you go to my bookie, all you got to do is pick 5 NFL games against the spread every week to climb the leaderboard and score your share of the huge cash prize pool. You bet, you win, they pay. Live in-game betting on every NFL game. That is what I've been trying to get you involved in. And then you said, well, I just can't figure out how to bet because they use all this terminology.
Well, that's not entirely the case. I said, well, let's try with some baseball. And then you got all greedy and said, no, I can't win my $100,000 if you want to worry about the Mets. I think that's
that's because another thing is people said if you want to bet on the Mets, you might as well just put your money in a bushel basket and set fire to it.
I saw that.
That's what some people said. Well, look, I have another email from one of the listeners because a lot of the listeners out there bet on sports and they know how to do these things. And they've been using my bookie and they've been using the promo code JCE because if you do that, when you visit MyBookie, MYBOOKIE, MyBookie online today and use the promo code JCE, they double your first deposit up to $1,000. Like if you put in $250, you get $500 to bet with and win this $100,000 while we're sitting here cashless. But John, he sent in an email. And I hope this will clear everything up for you, Brian. All right, here we go. Jim, here is an easy example of how to place a bet for the NFL games. Are you listening? Are you writing this down, Brian?
I'm listening. I'll write it down maybe when I go back and edit.
All right. Cleveland is minus 3.5 versus Cincinnati. This means Cleveland is favored to win the game and must win by 4 points. If you bet on Cincinnati, then they can lose by 3 points or less, and you would win. The 0.5 is there so that you can't push. If the spread was Cleveland minus 4 and they won or Cincinnati lost by 4, then it is considered a push and the bet is nullified. If this is helpful information to you, all I ask is that on the drive-thru or experience, you share some Cleveland wrestling history info. Love both the shows and go fuck yourself. John in Cleveland. So this is clear as day. And the 0.5 is there so that you can't push because pushing is bad. Because if the spread was...
what is that? You can't...
Well, if the spread was Cleveland -4 and they won, or Cincinnati lost by 4, then it's considered a push and the bet is nullified. Nullified means called off. So that right there explains everything, doesn't it?
Can I pick a champion in my stead? Where's Mike Tenay? Isn't he a bookkeeper or not?
Mike Tenay could help us out with a bookkeeper.
A bookmaker, excuse me. Isn't he a bookkeeper?
Well, no, he's not. He doesn't actually right now, I don't believe, physically take your money and place he worked in Las Vegas at a sports betting facility and knows a lot about these, an expert in the manner of these things, but I don't know if he actively does that right now. Just goes up to people on the street and say, hey, you gonna bet on the fucking Mets? I don't know that he does that. But all right. Get a hold of Mike Tenay.
Yeah, good luck with that.
What? I love Mike Tenay.
He's a difficult guy to get a hold of. He doesn't want to be bothered by people unless he's known them for a long time. Or potentially there's a lot of money involved.
I've known him for a long time, and there's $100,000 involved.
Okay. Well,
so we may have to do that. But my bookie, in the meantime, for you people who either know what the fuck all these words mean, or have people that are more interested in helping you out to win a bunch of money than Brian Last is, you go to my bookie, use the promo code JCE, get a double your money bonus, bet, win, get paid, my bookie. It seems so easy.
Let's go Mets.
Where are you going? All right. I've got to mention this real quick. We're not going to go into depth with it. Because things are just happening. And I've been at the post office all day so far today, so I'm not watching the news. But they're finally impeaching this piece of shit. And obviously, impeaching and removing is two different things, but they'll at least be able to call the witnesses and in public, just like they did with Nixon. And I'm old enough, I watched some of that. They had a lot of witnesses testifying. They didn't actually get to the fucking impeachment because he bailed before he could be humiliated. Hopefully that's what'll happen here and save everybody a lot of trouble. But I want to see the testimony. I want to see everybody under oath in public on worldwide television telling exactly what a piece of shit this motherfucker really is so that everybody can see it, because everybody with a brain's already known. I want to see these fucking redneck, hillbilly, knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing, gullible, sucker, fuckwad pieces of shit that put this motherfucker in office and are responsible for every bad thing, which there have been many, that he has done to the environment, to our relations around the world, to the fucking courts, for every lie that he's been allowed to tell in the most important office in the world, thanks to you stupid motherfuckers. I want to see it all come out. I want to see that hit their face, and I want to see them go, it'll be worse than when people were told that wrestling was a work, when they go, they've been right all along about this piece of shit, and I was such a fucking moron I couldn't see it. That's what I want to see. I don't even know if you can smarten some of these fuckers up, but I want to see everybody in public telling exactly what this piece of shit is, and I want to laugh when these motherfuckers hear it. Then, oh, Trump, make America great, make America great. Fuck, and by the way, I blocked about 36 more Trumpers off Twitter this morning. And save yourself some trouble. If you're a fucking Trumper and I didn't get you, unfollow me, because you don't deserve the entertainment and education of following Jim Cornette on Twitter if you're partially responsible for this embarrassment that we've had to suffer through for the last 3 years now. So fuck you. Take yourself off my fucking Twitter. But I blocked a bunch of them, and I said it's the same thing. If you support Trump, do it the same way you watch nasty porn, in private, quietly, without telling anybody, and with a healthy dose of shame. Because if you alert me to the fact that you do support this miserable piece of shit, fuck you, you're blocked. As a matter of fact, if you're a Trump fuck, turn this program off right now. We've got a bloody blue million listeners, and we don't need your stupid ass either. It'll raise the IQ of the general fucking population of our listeners, which is already pretty fucking high, because I can't imagine why you would be listening to this if you're a fucking Trumper, because I use big words. But next week, hopefully we're going to have more details on exactly what, and if the whistleblower If the whistleblower has talked by next week, we will definitely be covering that. What other president has ever had one of the people who listens in or records or transcribes or translates or whatever, one of the people on a call between our president of another country, what other president, Republican, Democrat, or whatever the fuck, going back to the dawn of the telephone, has ever had one of those people go, wait a minute, this is too fucking much?
Never.
Everybody that comes in contact with this fucking idiot in the government or anywhere else that has any knowledge of what the fuck is going on or what the norms are or how things are supposed to be done is personally offended by this piece of shit, as they should be. If you are a normal human being and you are not offended by the appearance, the actions, the statements, the thoughts, the comments, or the thought of, the idea of Donald fucking pig fucking Trump, fuck you. The more I get worked up and think about it. But anyway, next week we'll talk more about it when I've had a chance to watch the fucking news.
Hey, what are they saying in Kentucky about, what are Mitch McConnell's chances to get reelected?
Apparently excellent, because every election, people say they're mad at Mitch, ditch Mitch. He's got a horrible approval rating. And as we've said, the state of Kentucky is 2 blue dots and a sea of red shit. Louisville and Lexington, where they have colleges, people are actually educated. And there's a number of people in Eastern Kentucky that I'm very fond of. Hello, Ken and Lisa. But fuck, there's a lot of fucking hillbilly rubes and morons that will vote for these fuckers. That's why Kentucky always turns red in every election. It's so embarrassing. The first fucking state that turns red in the presidential election is Kentucky. It's a given, even though we've had Democratic governors, but they have to be Democrat light, right? Without the fucking taste and calories, just the label. But yeah, it's embarrassing. But no, everybody hates Mitch McConnell, but he still gets elected because there's a lot of, I'm in Louisville, right? So I see a lot of more normal people than most places in Kentucky. We're friendly, but a lot of us are stupid. Anyway, but the thought is he's 70-something years old. And I mean, look at him. You can just tell that he's in fucking ill health. Look at the way he looks. Just the lack of a chin all these years alone has to have interfered with his fucking breathing or something.
And can't you see him holding on till he's like 95 years old, being wheeled into the fucking Capitol?
Yeah, sort of like Grandpa in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, it'll probably be that way. Anyway, before we talk about NXT and the main problem I've got with wrestling in general that I've figured out these days, because NXT had a lot of good things going on, but there's one thing they and everybody else are lacking. But why is it that everybody says, now I hear people saying, well, if they do NXT at Full Sail University in front of the same people in the same building every week, well, then it'll just be dead and it'll be horrible. It'll be a bad atmosphere. And they used to say that the boys, some of the office people at Impact, when we go to the Impact Zone in Orlando, and they would say, well, this fucking crowd sucks because it's just the park people and it's just the same people all the time. And we do TV here all the time. Nothing looks so, that's why their reactions are, no, their reactions are bad because you're not giving them anything they like. And I'm sick and tired of hearing you cannot do TV in the same building every week for any length of time without killing a fucking crowd. You can if you don't give them a product that will kill them. Brian, you were a somewhat regular viewer of Ohio Valley Wrestling during my tenure as announcer and matchmaker, were you not?
Yeah, I saw a lot of it.
Okay, I'm not even going to count the old building because that was not a lot of people and it was a challenging environment with what with plumbing that didn't work most of the time and everybody having to take a piss out in the parking lot and the 150-degree heat in the summer. But once we moved into the new Davis Arena in 2002, we did TV there. Not only did we do TV there every Wednesday night, 50 weeks a year. I made Danny quit doing the night before Thanksgiving, and we took off in between Christmas and New Year's. But we also had an amateur show once a month on Sundays, and we also had a regular separately ticketed house show event with the main roster on at least one time a month. And the people were actually the people when we started, my last year in 2005, were screaming louder than they were when we were first moved in 2002. And we were full every week. Many of the same people, the regulars that came, but we had a steady crowd of people that would come intermittently. But we would be, it was a 500-seat building, but we would turn them away every week. And they were with everything because they also watched the television, and they screamed and yelled, and they booed all the right people, and they cheered all the right people, and they reacted to all the right things if they were done correctly. Very few times, and I've mentioned them on the program, such as the fucking Shane twins' horrible dark match and Linda Miles' couple of horrible TV matches, one of which I couldn't even air at a fucking local television show. That every once in a while, the people would scoff laugh. And I hated that. And that's generally when I got violent, because nobody is going to scoff laugh at my wrestling show in my hometown while I'm sitting out there calling it. Heads will roll. But can you testify to the fact that the people in that building, after we had done 200 weekly episodes of television, were screaming and yelling just as loud as they were at the start?
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but I could say as a regular viewer, I was just as interested. I was probably more interested at the end than I was earlier on, despite all that big talent that later went on to the WWE. The stories got more interesting to me. I started, it's not just good matches. You have to make people want to see what's going to happen next.
Right.
And you always did that with me, especially at the end. I always bring it up, Eminem and the Heartbreakers. Love that.
Well, and that's another thing is that in 2001, 2002, we had those great main event talents, John Cena, Batista, Brock Lesnar, et cetera, on and on, that everybody crows about that class at the time. But there was a big disparity in some cases between the top guys and the underneath guys. In 2004, 2005, we had a better crew, a more talented crew, and potentially a little bit more experienced crew by that time up and down the card. So the shows as a whole were better, the cards were better, and the talent understood what they were doing better, whether it be in promos or executing angles or whatever, because they'd had a little more time. And plus, I've said a lot of times, OVW was my best booking, much better than Smoky Mountain, because I'd had more time and more experience with it and more chance to work on it. And I could be around these guys all the time and understand how to manipulate their interactions with each other, who would gel best with the other guys. And also I saw what the people were liking and tried to give them a little more of that. So it's just a cop out when these companies say, if you do, and every studio wrestling show that lasted, every weekly territory, my God, Louisville Gardens, they did a show there every week for 27 fucking years. Now, yes, the last 8 years was a shell of its former self just because of the changes in the business. But I saw as many people hopping in the ring 10 years after they started running every week as I did, 5 years after. It did not. It's only when you give people Impact used to not, because of the, influence of shit stain, there'd be so much bullshit pre-taped, and the pre-tapes had to go so long, and the backstage stuff, they wouldn't show that to the audience because then the tapings would take forever. So people are only seeing part of the shit because it's not unfold in front of them. They're doing shit out of order. But at the same time, and once again, even if it's a amusement park and people are just coming in to get out of the heat, they're in Orlando, Florida, and they tape a couple of times a month. You can't tell me that you can't get people to see a free wrestling show with free admission. With Kurt Angle and Sting and all the names that they had a couple times a month. But yet in Louisville, I can get 500 people to come and see the fucking wrestling school every week. Fuck you. You're just not giving them a show that they wanted to fucking see. And the studio tapings that are coming up in Atlanta, that I'm going to be doing for the NWA this coming week, September 30th and October 1st. If you follow them at NWA on Twitter, you'll see all kinds of video of me too, talking about how great it was. They were in the studio for fucking, 20 years every week? People are still jumping up and down because they liked what they were seeing. It's only when you give people, especially these days, half the show, don't show them the fucking pre-tapes or don't smarten them up in some other way so they don't have any idea what the fuck's going on, do disjointed shows, use the wrong talent or use them in the wrong way, then you'll kill the same building. But if you do good shows with good talent and cater to what the fans want to see, and in some cases you have to educate them as to what they want to see first and then give them what they've decided they want to see after you've told them, then you get good, steady crowds that will stick with you and are into what you're fucking doing. So I don't understand these people, both in and out of the business, that don't recognize that for what it is. We were always in buildings every week or every month, studios every week. For decades. Nobody ever got tired of it until everybody fucking went to shit.
Yeah, again, it goes back to what I was saying before, that it can't just be good matches. It has to be that people care. You know, people, let's use Sting as an example. People may come once or twice to see Sting, the star, Sting. But after that, they may only come back if he's doing something they care about. So that's what it comes down to. All those shows, Georgia, Mid-South, Memphis, Knoxville, all those shows that were running weekly, they needed to make sure you cared enough to return next week.
And that's where the art of booking came in, and matchmaking and manipulating and coming up with the right finishes and coming up with the right angles. But then you have to have guys that know how to execute them. And in my opinion, and we'll talk about more of this in a second with what else is missing, but a lot of today's wrestling is missing guys with the experience of either having done these things so you understand the timing, or seen these things done so that you understand visually what it's supposed to look like when you do it. And that's the biggest problem I've had with laying stuff out for guys that requires timing or ring positioning or getting a point across in a finish, because they've not seen it done correctly and properly. So sometimes things all run together. I used to tell guys in wrestling school, every finish, each action in a finish has to have a second or two of the spotlight. Everybody can't watch 6 things going on at one time. So those 6 things have to be staged so that the spotlight is on the thing that you need to notice. These 2 guys over here in the corner, but then suddenly they're being still because now there's action between the 2 guys in the ring on the other side that you need to see. And once they take their bump, that's when the run-in happens. So those 2 guys are down. The other 2 guys are immobilized in the corner. All you see is the guy running in as he comes off the top and lands on the fucking guy he's trying to fuck and rolls out. Once he rolls out, he drops down behind the ring so you can't even see him, and he's not attracting any attention, because at that point, that's when the guys in the corner, one pickles the other and he falls through the ropes. So the referee turns around and sees the fucking guy covering the guy that just had the other guy come down off the top rope on him. It's a constant switching of a spotlight. Sometimes it's 10 seconds, sometimes it's just 2 seconds, but it's things that if you do at the same time, people miss one of them and they don't get the point, or if it happens too quickly or without enough pantomime and enough body language, you don't actually get it or you don't see it. Or if it's drawn out too far, then you have time to think about, well, this actually is kind of implausible what's going on here. So that's why you always need to nail your timing and don't give them too much time to think about it. But at the same time, don't do it so quick that they didn't see it to begin with. It's a fucking art. And a lot of guys they know how to do all the moves, but nobody knows how to do the angles and the finishes and get the point across as much as they used to, because they haven't done it. Not everybody's doing old time angles these days, and they haven't seen it, because apparently a lot of the guys, they only study tapes for moves and matches and don't study tapes for finishes. And yes, they'll study promos, but sometimes they'll just study what's said rather than how it's said. or in what context, or the delivery. Dutch Mantell used to love the word inflection, because you got to have the right inflection in your voice to make it sound legitimate and give the emotion. You can say the same thing in 4 different emotions, and the same words sound completely different. So a lot of that's why I say I love the studio TV shows, because the audience is is part of the backdrop. Really, you're doing the show for the television audience at home. In an arena setting, you're performing for an arena, and the audience at home and on television is the voyeur of that. Studio shows, it's the opposite. The people are just there for a reaction, but they're kind of part of the backdrop, and you're specifically playing to the cameras and to the audience at home. And in the old days, you'd be selling tickets, but now you're just selling yourself. And it's a whole lot harder when you don't have a bunch of people and a bunch of special effects trying to fucking do a smoke and mirrors job on you. You got to get over on personality.
I would think if I was a promoter, I would want that. I would want a regular, recurring, weekly crowd, because that's like the best test audience too. You know what's getting over. You know what's hot with the people who keep and if they keep coming back, you know you're doing something right. If you see like, oh, there's new people there, you know something's up. I think that's kind of a good thing for a promoter to have.
Well, and then it was great here in Louisville, and then Heyman got here. They punished him after they ran me off. They punished him by sending him here where I wanted to be. And the first thing he did was he pissed off the regular fans, because, you know, the old ladies and the kids and the people, the old guys and the people that came and got there early to get their seat every week. He moved them over away from the hard camera, because he wanted all of his plants and all the amateur class students and their girlfriends across from the hard camera, because he would tell them what to scream and yell and jump up and down for, like an ECW audience. So all of a sudden, the people that used to scream and jump up and down in the right places are now during everything just screaming and jumping up and down. And you're like, what the fuck? Wait a minute. Why are they all over this? And the regular fans who got moved over to the sides where they wouldn't be, because he wanted to send the tape to the office, and it looked like all of his shit was getting over, right? When the people are screaming and jumping up and down. And so the regular fans got moved over to the sides. They couldn't get their favorite seats anymore and be on camera when they, you know, blew kisses at the baby faces. So a lot of them quit coming. Danny got pissed. And basically it changed the whole makeup of the crowd. And then it hurt because it helped fool the people in the office in Stamford into thinking that people were liking what Paul was putting on the show, and the guys that he wanted to feature, that he specifically wanted to push to the. See, I always wanted to keep my top guys as long as I could to give them the extra bit of polish, and also because until people got tired of them, why did I want to lose them, right? But since he didn't have any business interest in OVW, all he wanted to do was take the guys that he liked and push them up to the main roster as quick as possible, so they would be beholden to him, and it would look like he was getting guys to the main roster quick. So he'd have the people especially jumping up and down during their segments, so it would look like it got over to the TV audience so he could fool Stamford. But what it did was it ran off a lot of the regular audience. They didn't like the style of television. I heard this from a number of the fans, because it was like ECW, and he was booking for Philly and Louisville, so they didn't like it. And the ratings went down, and the spot shows went to shit because he didn't promote them at all because he didn't care. And then finally, when he'd served his penance and they fucking let him go back to wherever he went to, then Al Snow took over, I think, at that point, which at least he was more worried about OVW's business. But yeah, Heyman in about 6 months tanked the fucking company.
Did you watch those shows? I mean, that was like CM Punk, Ken Kennedy.
No,
was that
cool? I didn't watch for a year and a half. And then it was January of 2007. I said, all right, because I was sitting in front of the TV when OVW came on. I said, I'm going to watch this and see what the fuck they've done to it. And within 20 minutes, I was violently angry. They had that fucking guy Roadkill, right? Grabbed somebody and held them in front of him while he was cutting this awful promo to one of the baby faces that just couldn't figure out how to just take this fucking poor innocent victim out of this guy's hands and just beat him up. It was horribly staged. Then they had a deal where the fucking heels were fooled into running out after the baby faces and were tripped and fell into something that was purported to be cow shit and rolled around in it. Then they had a women's lingerie pillow fight, something in the ring. I got so fucking violently mad at what they had done to the program, because this was none of Danny Day. I don't know who was booking it then. I'm not blaming anybody, but it was all WWF influence. After I had beat my head against the wall and deprived myself of everything, including pretty much a personal life for 5 years, to obsessively make Gilligan's Island, Louisville, where it was the only place in the world that fucking wrestling was taken seriously and we had a great product, to see that, I took 5 Xanaxes. I turned my couch over in my TV room in a violent rage. It flipped twice and almost went out the picture window. I fucking ranted and raved and broke some shit in the garage and went to sleep on the Xanax. I woke up the next afternoon, called Bolin, told him I was going to kill everybody involved, went back to sleep and woke up on Monday. And that's when I concocted the plan that Danny Davis and I entered into, where it was time for the contract to come up. I was working for TNA. I still owned part of OVW. I said, Danny, I don't want your money, but I do not want to have anything to do with this fucking company anymore after that television program I saw. So we figured out a way that we convinced the WWF office, and John Laurinaitis in particular, that I had gone out of my mind. I was insane. I had a grudge against everybody. Danny and I had fallen out, and unless I got my part of the company bought back at a fair price, I was going to go to the internet and spill everything I knew about everybody and slander everybody. And I sent a fucking 4-page fax that was written as it got increasingly farther into the thing. It was written in increasingly more erratic handwriting to Danny about how they had killed wrestling in Louisville, which was entirely my opinion. It was legitimate that they had. And fucking faxed that to him so he could show it to him as proof, and they advanced him the money to fucking buy me out at a fair price. And then because they goddamn fucking fucked Danny months later and pulled the fucking deal and sent everybody to Florida, he never actually had to pay that money back. So
wow.
So John Laurinaitis was, it was a Memphis angle. That's when they first got convinced I was crazy. I was so fucking mad at what their influence had done to the wrestling business in Louisville that at that point, I probably would have driven over somebody with my car.
Well, let me ask you, you obviously weren't watching, but you were hearing things from different people. You said earlier, the Heyman era was different, but at least it was well put together TV for Heyman style wrestling. What have you heard?
No, that's another thing. See, I would write a format that was timed to the 15 second. Everything was 15 seconds or 15, 30, 45, 60 or quantities therein. And Danny was the director and switched the cameras and faded to black and played the music and everything. So everything was right in front of him. He did everything himself from his chair. He kept the time on the program. And then we would get together for about an hour afterwards and drop in the commercials that I'd done the voiceovers for and provided the copy for the chyrons and the graphics and etc. And if the taping was over at 10 o'clock, Danny'd be out the door at 11:30. Show was done. Fucking Paul, he finally had to tell him, motherfucker, I'm not going to stay here till 6 o'clock in the morning, because Paul would try to do the same thing. And luckily we had gotten the digital equipment by then, because you couldn't have done this beforehand when we were shooting on Super VHS. But he would just shoot everything with the basic outline of a format, and then he'd try to put it together afterwards. And it'd be there all fucking night, because the next day, Paul was supposed to fly to Georgia for Deep South, because they did their shows on Wednesdays. But he would either stay up all night doing the post-production or call a meeting that he was after the taping at OVW, where he was there so late that he could call him the next morning. So it was so late, I couldn't make the flight, so he didn't have to go to Georgia, because it was a lost fucking cause and he knew it. But Danny finally had to say, motherfucker, I'm not going to do fucking hours of post-production. What the fuck is this? Because he was used to having everything done and overdone. I was an over-preparer. Paul didn't prepare at all.
Well, that's the Heyman era. What did you hear about the Tommy Dreamer era when he was booking?
Nobody understood what the fuck was going on. I like Tommy. I don't have a problem with him. It was just a brief period of time, but they just handed it to him. And he started a bunch of murder mysteries without even knowing himself who the fuck it was. He had a mystery when I was off for the 6 weeks there before I finally had my final break. Where's Cornette? I said, all right. Where is Cornette? He said, I don't know. I figured you'd want to finish it. What the fuck? That's like, A guy's got a headlock on you. You call one tackle, drop down, you finish it and shoot him off. What the fuck? Right? So, but anyway, that was, that's what happened to OVW between 2005 and 2007 when I divested myself of my interest because it was so embarrassing. And it was not Danny Davis's fault. That's when he got to the point shortly thereafter that where he would just go in his office, not turn the monitor on, close the door, and do all the commission business and all the paperwork. And as long as there were enough people to keep the doors open, he didn't care what the fuck they did. Because if he watched it, he'd hit the ring and beat the fuck out of everybody. Anyway, what are you doing this week on your massive platform? And let's talk about some more things I don't like. And a couple I do.
Well, let's talk about my massive platform first. This week on the Arcadian...
Talk about your giant throbbing platform.
This week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, we go against the spread and we push. This week on the network, the Super Studcast, available for patrons of the Studcast at patreon.com/Studcast. Ron talks for over 90 minutes with his second cousin, Roy Lee Welch. Hear about the early days of Lester Welch. Hear about Roy Welch. Hear about the early days of Hulk Hogan in Southeastern, as well as Roy Lee's thoughts on the Atlanta Wrestling War. He wasn't just there, he was in the office as his father, Lester Welch, became a partner in the organization. So he has a very unique perspective on that. Hear all of that and so much more. Once again, patreon.com/Studcast. Also,
did you see on the internet recently I guess they were 22 years old, made a list of the most important families in wrestling? And the Fullers it was on the internet. The Fullers and Welches weren't on it. But
it's ridiculous.
But everybody that's ever been related to somebody in wrestling over the last 25 years was a big deal. But yeah, but the first family, the largest family, the most successful family, and the family with the widest reach and influence wasn't on it because they'd never heard of them because they're 22 years old.
It's so crazy. This week, Jim, on John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, Then and Now, it is the longest episode we've ever had because it is a packed, news-filled episode. We review two different episodes, the original broadcast from August 6th and August 13th, 1989. I don't know how well you remember this stuff, Jim, or if you ever heard it, but John had the exclusive interview from Ricky Steamboat's gym. Bonnie Steamboat set it up with Ricky Steamboat discussing his contract negotiations falling through and his leaving the NWA. This was a major news-breaking segment.
I remember it. I remember that now. Yes, because that was not done back in those days.
Well, that's a big deal. And then the second episode we cover, Jim Herd, Executive Vice President of World Championship Wrestling, comes on to defend his side of the story, as well as discuss where the NWA is in their battle with the World Wrestling Federation. If you have heard Jim rip on Jim Herd for years and never actually heard the man speak, you should check this out at pwspod.com or available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcast, John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, Then and Now.
I encourage everybody to listen to Jim Herd bumble through a fucking interview where he's trying to talk about wrestling and act like he knows what he's saying.
Hear more of that? Also, some news. This is the week that Johnny Ace broke his cheekbone. Find out what happened in 1989. Also, of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership. I think you need to freshen up your soundboard.
I just like that one. How about this one?
I like that one.
Okay, from now on, go ahead, do it.
The Mothership. I don't like it so much anymore.
How about this?
I don't know, but boy, this
How
is going...
about this? That's probably the best thing. All right, go ahead.
How about this? You can't see what I'm doing right now, but how about this?
Well, I bet I can figure it out.
Of course, we've been telling you about episode 100. I swear it is almost time. We are just now finishing a couple of things that we had to fix up with the episode. It is coming out, but quick note here about the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, because we have had some production issues in the last week because of some audio problems. And we are actually right now, because things have gotten busy to the point where I need to bring on some extra help to work on some things on the production side. The business end of Arcadian Vanguard is doing so much now that I need someone to handle more of the production work. So everything should be back on schedule with a regular recurring schedule within the next few weeks, including the Mid-South Wrestling Podcast. A lot of people have asked about that. And even the 605 should be back on a more regular schedule. We're getting everything on the back end straightened out right now. And I apologize to anyone.
When is Styles Bitchley coming back from that monastery in Tibet? That's what started this whole thing. He did so much of the work. If Styles had not decided to become a monk, even though he does look better with a head shaved like that, because it was so pointed before, every time he'd go to a fucking a barber shop, they'd cut his hair with a pencil sharpener.
Have you asked Shifty?
Shifty doesn't know anything about production.
No, besides, you asked him where Styles is, I meant.
Well, no, the Shifty Flanagan, my attorney that I found before I got Stephen P. New, he was Shifty Flanagan. For those new listeners, he was my agent for a while. I found him at the Garment District up in New York when I was up there for one of the Ring of Honor events. But he had to move, actually, because Urban Renewal? They tore down the phone booth that he was using as an office there on that corner. They redid the whole block, and I kind of lost track of him.
You know, it's not completely ridiculous just because where Ring of Honor was running at that period of time wasn't far from the Garment District. It was really right there.
That's why I was there. It was right catty-cornered to the Flower District.
You see, now you're just talking shit. But anyway, the 605 Super Podcast, 605pod.com. Go through the archives today, also on YouTube, and of course, the store for t-shirts and more, tinyurl.com/superpod store, the 605 Super Podcast.
Well, there you go.
There I go.
All right. Were we going to do anything else? But no, not before we get to NXT, because this is, and as we mentioned, that's why we're switching the production schedule for a little while, because this is the debut on USA from September 18th. This is because we're taping on Wednesday, so I haven't seen the second show yet, obviously, because it hasn't been produced. But, once again, they know how to do a fucking television show from a technical standpoint. Anybody affiliated with the WWE knows how to do a television program. I liked the kind of hot, cold open. That sounds stupid, but the cold open video, a cold open, as we mentioned, is when you go into action or a VTR or a package or whatever without the opening theme. The cold open had good action. Then it's got Triple H's voiceover. And then I could tell that the first part of the bit that Triple H did was pre-taped, and then they tried to match it. When they came back out of the B-roll of the action video, they didn't bring Triple H's live mic up for one word, so he missed one word, but you couldn't hardly say. But when he walked out from behind the curtain, they clipped that pretty fucking close where it looked live, right? The good stuff at the start, Mauro Ranallo is great, although I worry he's going to have a hernia one of these days. I think, I remember in OVW, I fucking announced so hard I had nosebleeds on OVW, so I can't tell anybody to gear it back, but he's fucking great.
I'm not a fan of the announcer just screaming at you for the whole broadcast, but he's the only guy that actually does it well.
It works for him because he really is into it. He's in the fucking zone, and you can tell that he's got all the fucking quick shit, and Nigel is doing a great job, and Beth Phoenix is well-spoken. She's one of the better, maybe the best, female commentator. Is that going to get me in trouble? Because I haven't heard that many great ones. There haven't been that many at all. She's one of the better ones. What do you think?
I thought she did a good job. I thought she was better than, is it Renee Young, the one on Raw? They made her a commentator. And
yes, I've seen her a time or two. Well, yeah, Beth at least has been in the business and and understands the terminology. And whereas Renee, I think, would be, obviously she hadn't been around that long, so it wouldn't come natural to her.
Plus she has Vince in her ear. And I got to say also, Nigel, I said it last time, next to you, Nigel's the best color guy in the business. He's incredible.
Yeah, he just, he has done a tremendous job and all through the show, except once again, because Nigel is so good and sounds so natural and sounds so non-stagey or like the phony announcer voice type of thing. Whenever he says sports entertainment or now NXT universe, it just kills it for me because you can tell he obviously would never use those words unless he was told. And that just kills your announcer for me. But anyway, announcing great, open great. What is the first match that they put on their debut on USA for this program that is expected to compete with their new arch rivals, a 4-way fucking girls match. And once again, everybody's, oh, now Cornette hates the girl. Well, no, if this had been Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch versus Pickett, Awesome Kong, or whatever, okay. But no, they put 4, as best I can tell, middle of the card girls. I know Mia Yim personally, and she looked better than I've ever seen her. She's a hard worker. She's a good girl. I know her since Ring of Honor. So I don't know the other ones. I'm not knocking anybody except maybe Candice LeRae, because I know she has in the past hung out with the dick guy and all the fucking play wrestlers. So I'm sure she's done a bunch of shit that I would just verbally eviscerate her for if I'd actually seen it, but I haven't. I've just heard her name, really. So I can't say anything good about her because I know that the stuff is out there, but she didn't do anything offensive here. But it's 4 fucking middle of the card girls that you can't having a 4-way. They start out with 2 guys, one you want to get over. Have a nice match and let the announcer spend the first 7 or 8 minutes of the program billboarding what we're going to see and talking about it while you have some good action that sets the tone and get a guy over. And then put the girls on second. Or whatever. I don't have a 4-way girls match when once again, they're thinking that, okay, now NXT is on USA. So all the NXT fans that have been watching us on the network can watch us on USA. But USA is reaching a bunch of people that have never seen the NXT talent. That's the whole fucking idea. So why do you put 4 girls out there to have a 4-way where they're just all doing shit to one another over and over, confusing? Mia worked hard. Nobody really gets over. And Candice LeRae wins, and like I said, I can't say anything good about it, even though she didn't do anything offensive, because I know the shit's out there. It's got to be.
What'd you think of Bianca Belair?
Well, she was okay. I'd rather seen any of these girls in a fucking single match, where even if they'd had an opening match with the girls, at least just put a girl over. But it's just you've automatically put 4 women. I don't know who the fuck they are. If I'm a new NXT viewer, and I am. In a match where they're just doing shit to each other over and over. Nothing's going to hook me there, because if I want to see people if I'm a fan that wants to see people just doing shit to each other over and over, then I want to see the 4 guys where they're going to have a car crash. And so I don't know why that match was placed first. Not just first on any show if they were an established program, but the first on the network. It was fine, but it was just confusing, especially if you don't know who anybody is. And then when Candice LeRae wins, here comes Shayna Baszler and Marina Schaefer and Jessamine Duke, right? The horsewomen, along with Rousey. And they look badass. They all look different than the average WWF girl, which is fucking great. Because all the average WWF girls look too fucking average, like each other. A stare down because Candice LeRae, wants the title and Baszler's the champion. But they did a stare down where they just stared each other down endlessly. And there was Shayna's holding the fucking belt up and Candice LeRae is looking up at her because she's about 6 inches shorter. But the other 2 heels are behind Candice LeRae. Nothing happened. Either it should have been a fucking 5 or 6 second stare down and let the baby face walk off. Or the heels need to jump her and kick shit out of her, but don't just stand there fucking endlessly and nothing happened, in my opinion. But you know what happened after that?
I don't recall off the top of my head, no.
They finally not only identified the announcers, but gave them an on-camera. Because we saw Mauro Ranallo at the start of the program when Triple H came out from behind the curtain. He did a little open, but then Nigel and Beth just started talking, and I swear to God, I didn't hear him identify them. I didn't hear a verbal identification. I'm here with Nigel McGuinness and Beth Phoenix. There was no lower third Chiron until after the fucking first match. What is the matter with during one of the girls' entrances, the floor camera swings over to the fucking desk and give them a lower third and let's put a face with the voice just so that I know who the fuck's talking. That's just a pet peeve of mine too. Anyway, they showed a nice little Adam Cole video and they billboarded Roderick Strong and Velveteen Dream for later on in the program. They did a nice little, I don't know how the fuck to say this name, but he was Donovan Dijak. He's a big fucking tall guy, looks good athlete. I met him somewhere in the last year. Was it at the Crockett Cup? Maybe. No, I don't think he was on that, but it was at another. But anyway, I'd heard about him, hadn't seen him, saw him there, thought he looked fucking great. Him and this Keith Lee, who at least has a different physique. He's the big fucking 300-something pound guy, but he can move around. He did a nice little package with them. Then they did like immediately after the girls match, they wanted to educate. I'm thinking, well, they're starting to educate us on who these people are, but they threw 3 packages in quickly, right? And I'm like, now I've forgotten who the first one was, unless I'm writing it down. But Killian Dane and Matt Riddle and billboarded their match that's going to happen tonight on the WWE Network, which, of course, I did not see because it wasn't on fucking television. So I know they were trying to pitch people to the network, but we won't be reviewing that. I mean, a fan of anybody in any of those packages, my dear boy?
I mean, they're okay. I'm not really following NXT. I mean, this is going to really begin me following NXT regularly again for the first time, really, since the Revival left. Shortly after that is when I kind of lost interest beyond just TakeOver. So yeah, I'm kind of getting reacquainted with a lot of the wrestlers there. Even though I know they were indie darlings, a lot of these guys, I don't know who a lot of them are.
The next match was Sean Maluta versus Cameron Grimes. Do you know who Cameron Grimes used to be? I'm trying to think of his name. Look that up, because wasn't he in TNA when I stopped in at Jeff Jarrett's behest 2 years ago? And I can't remember what his name was. I'm thinking that's the guy, but the point is, Cameron Grimes, he looks different. He looks like Outlaw Trevor Lee. I think, wasn't he in TNA at that time?
I think he may have been, yeah.
Yes. At the time, and everybody was raving about his work. At the time, I just thought, well, his work's okay, but physically and just look-wise, it was just, But now he's grown up a little bit. And I love the fucking pale skin and the black body hair. I like I said, he looks a little bit like Outlaw Billy Black, just not as old and dirty and sleazy. But he's grown up a little bit. He's got the longer hair. He's got the beard. He looks like something, and he looks different. So I was already ready to like him, and then, boom, he breaks out of the fucking corner, hits that goddamn big flying stomp. Boom, 1, 2, 3, a one-move squash. I haven't seen that, except Low-Key's been doing it in MLW, but this was even more explosive. So I liked that just for the sake of it. They don't all have to be 30 minutes, right?
It's refreshing to see a match end like in less than 5 minutes.
And then they did the package for the main event, North American title, Velveteen Dream against Roderick Strong. Obviously, I know Roddy. I have heard Velveteen Dream's name, and it is a bit unwieldy. I had never seen him. During the package, I'm thinking it's a bit much. I'm ready not to like it, but I ended up liking it. It's not overly goofy, and the kid can work. You can tell he's green. Well, we'll get into it, but from the start, Roddy looks like he doesn't age. He's lost a little hair, as far as I can tell. He looks great physically. He's always in shape. You can't run this fucking guy down. He was the guy to always go to have a great world title match or a great main event match in Ring of Honor. He struggled badly with his promos then, and I haven't heard him talk live now, but the stuff in the package that he did, he got a pretty good game face there at the end when I left Ring of Honor, but his promos were still rough because he has a certain tonal quality that just doesn't give you, it doesn't give you the shivers, like if fucking Morgan Freeman was cussing you out, you motherfucker, Yeah. But on the package he sounded better there too. And that was really Roddy's only weakness in the wrestling business, was his promos. Velveteen Dream's entrance, I hate to say it, it almost kind of moves into a guilty pleasure fucking area for me because it's a little much, but there's something.
Because it's Earth, Wind, and Fire and Princess enough.
Yeah,
you can like it. That's why it's your guilty pleasure.
Yeah. The match, they started with good, tight wrestling. Roddy is so smooth, and he was obviously leading this match. The Velveteen Dream you can tell he's green. I think they said he's 22 or 23, but he's got tremendous potential, and he's doing some good stuff. And this match, they gave some time. I don't know why they don't pitch to the fucking break. I think that's a Kevin Dunn thing, too. Or somebody in production up there, because they'll say this match continues or this match rages on, but then they'll just go to, what is the matter with saying, the champion is in jeopardy? Can fucking Velveteen Dream pull it or whatever the fuck? We'll be right back after this. Stay here for 2 minutes, whatever. Just pitch to the fucking break. We know it's coming. It's goofy. But they came back in a running spot. Glory, hallelujah. I explained that on the show here not long ago, didn't I?
Yeah.
Maybe they've been listening. For the new listeners, when you come back from a commercial break and the wrestlers are in the ring having the match and they're in a fucking hold and stationary, you're a fucking idiot if you come back there, because it's boring. What I always did, any show I produced, whether it was OVW, Ring of Honor, whatever the fuck, or in TNA when I was producing a particular match, when we went to commercial break and we had our option of when to come up, if it wasn't live, or even if it was live, the referees have IFBs. I would give the referee the Iggy to have them start a spot. Just punch the button, say, get them running. We're up in 5. And then you don't come up on a stationary hold. You come up when a guy is flying off the ropes and hits with a tackle and another one. And that way the announcer, sometimes it was me as well, could be calling the match and then welcome people back. Shoulder tackle off the ropes, drop down to evade, hip toss by Roderick Strong, Velveteen Dream on the offensive here and now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Whatever the fuck. I love that because it's more energy. So they came back in a running spot. I like that. I think Velveteen Dream needs higher waisted tights. He doesn't have to go all the way Bobo Brazil, but he needs to have his pants up higher, because it wasn't that his ass was showing. It was that point where his tights and back were at the goofy looking area in between where they're supposed to be and where they'd show the crack of your ass. It just looked goofy. He needs to bring his pants up. Roddy got good heat on him. Those great chops. I don't know how Roddy gets that. His chops sound like Walter's, but his hands are half size. Roddy has more facials and more personality, that he's projecting more passion than he used to. He went for a surfboard at one time, and I think Dream kind of jerked his arm out because he didn't know where it was going, and he muffed it up, but he covered it up well. But they built this match. They started out with good tight wrestling and some holds and some counters, and then they built up to some running action. And then the heavier strikes came in. Velveteen Dream, his first comeback that he blew, it was a good comeback, but I thought Roddy, he was trying to feed the energy of the comeback, but if you go back and watch it, he bumped down and got back up so fast, it was too fast. It was like down, up, down, up, down, up, where he was trying to feed so fast that he was not selling or even really registering the bump that he had taken previously. I think, they could have slowed that down a little bit and he could have staggered a little bit more. It would have been even better. But Dream's got a nice super kick. They did some nice back and forth stuff. Everything made sense. Roddy hits some great forearm strikes. That thing he does where he hits the ropes and he's got the guy hanging on the ropes and he comes off and boom, pickles him with one arm and then hits the ropes on the other side and comes and pickles him with the other one. I like that shit. The best part of the match to me was right there when he'd hit Dream with the power bomb and turned him into the stronghold, the Boston Crab. And not only did Velveteen Dream have those facials where he was selling it and he was screaming, but he crawled in just enough time where it wasn't too long, wasn't too short, wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. It was just right, and got that rope break, and the people went nuts on the rope break. Tell me one fucking garbage deathmatch wrestler that's ever had a crowd of people go nuts for a rope break. That's the way it's supposed to be done, boys.
They only go nuts for a rib break or a leg break.
Or when you slice several major nerves. and have to have them grafted from other parts of your body. And it could take years to regrow the complete use if that happens. I bet that gets a nice little pop from the crowd. Anyway, so then right at that super rope break, but they're both selling now. And this is the perfect time for here comes Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish to come down ringside. And, I'm a fan of Cole and O'Reilly and actually Bobby Fish too. We got him in there right just before I was gone from Ring of Honor, but he's a great technician and he works good, I think, in this group because he's the oldest, but he hangs with them physically. Anyway, I was more than pleased to see that Velveteen Dream shot Roderick Strong off and backdropped him. I haven't seen a goddamn backdrop in a wrestling match so long. It used to be my favorite thing to see. The big backdrop. Nobody even knows how to do one anymore. Then the points are deducted because the referee, whoever he was, I didn't hear a name, horribly out of place for his bump. It was the deal where Roddy was down on his ass and Dream was closing in on him and Roddy was going to fucking grab the Dream front of his tights and fall backwards and propel the Dream supposedly into the turnbuckles, but the referee was supposed to be there so he could get pancaked. Well, if it had been the other way around, I think they could have saved it because Roddy wouldn't have done this, but the referee was obviously not in the right place. Roddy had his back to the whole thing, so he is trusting the referee to have got it in there. When he grabs the tights and falls backwards, Velveteen Dream sees the referee's nowhere in front of him. So as he's going, he tries to stick his right arm out, like maybe the referee will walk in front of it, but the referee did not. So Dream goes past the referee with his arm outstretched, and then the referee phantom bumps. And the people started booing and grumbling.
Can't really blame him.
And here's the thing. That's the kind of, all these fans deducted a few stars because, oh gosh, he didn't hit him. But that's the kind of thing that in the old days would have hurt the town. If, at least it's not going to do that in this case. But, and people understand when I say hurt the town. They don't use that term anymore. If you did something to hurt the town at a live event, it meant that somebody went down from a phantom blow or something like this was obviously phony. And you could tell because the next few houses or several houses, the ticket sales would be down. If something like this happened in the Louisville Gardens in 1978, it would take 3-4 weeks, however long, depending on what the egregiousness was of the offense, before the taste was out of their mouth, and it would actually hurt the town when something obviously phony took place, which is why all these things became rules for a reason. Nobody in wrestling did things that were obviously phony because every time they did, it hurt the ticket sales. You had a marker, you had a measuring stick, what you could quantify whether the town was doing good or not. And every time somebody would come back in the locker room and say, well, that may have killed a fucking town. If it was that bad, if they weren't just joking, if it was that bad, you could tell. It would hurt the town. Anyway, so the referee goes down from the invisible bump. And the people are grumbling, but that's when the heels could do their interference. And it was great that, once again, rather than just them just jumping in and doing something, the Dream nails them all off the apron or does whatever. But then Roddy comes back with the diversion and hits one of those big backbreakers. I don't know how he fucking does it, where he suplexes the guy up in the air and spins him around, and then the guy lands on his knees. And it was a false finish, but the fans went batshit for that one because they thought that was going to be the finish. That was a good one false finish to put in because they figured after the interference, that would be it. And then Dream goes the top and Cole super kicks him while the referee's distracted. And Roddy hits the same backbreaker again. And this time, boom, 1, 2, 3 gets it. And I thought that was a great match, especially for the one guy being a pro for a couple of years, however long.
I thought it was good. I was never a big Roderick Strong fan in Ring of Honor for no particular reason. I just thought he was bland, I guess, maybe. But
he wasn't. I mean, I like Roddy, but I mean, and I've come out and said almost as much. He was bland because he got the physical part very early, but it took a while for the personality to come out and for the facial expressions to come out, and also because he had such a baby face, and that's where the expression came from. Your smiling, young, good-looking baby face, right? But it was such a baby face. And and his promos he struggled with. So I could agree with you there. And he looks like he's got some more oomph to him now that he's gotten older and roughed up around the edges.
Yeah. And I think it's a good group, a good faction.
Yes, and they've got all the belts. So the undisputed era but anyway, so point is, I could have give a shit about the girls' match. I liked the one move squash for what it was, and Roderick Strong and Velveteen Dream had a very good match. And I can see the Dream has some personality that people get into. Was the next Stone Cold Steve Austin on this program? No, he was not. However, they didn't do anything stupid. They didn't do anything mocking the business. They didn't do anything ridiculous or silly. Everybody worked hard. It was professionally done on everybody's parts. The announcing was not amateurish. They didn't have any cringes in there. Nobody stuck his hands in his pockets and tried to wrestle. So hopefully All Elite Wrestling has got it out of their fucking system with these big shows that they've done primarily for their core audience, because if they put that shit on television opposite a professional production with professional announcers and quality talent that don't make fun of anything, and they're trying to get you invested emotionally in these people, they're going to get their ass kicked. I don't see any other way to put it.
Was there anything you saw that AEW did better?
Well, I mean, obviously, there wasn't a Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes match here. There wasn't even a Chris Jericho versus an Adam Page match. There's, just because I like Roderick Strong and Velveteen Dream doesn't mean I think either one of them, realistically, and I'm personal friends of one, are going to be as big a star as Chris Jericho. Maybe Dream will, maybe he won't. But, I mean, as far as name value, and they've got Jim Ross on the program, All Elite's going to start out with some names that they know better. But then again, NXT works with a promotion that has some names that have had some television exposure. And if they start crossing over into NXT land, then that's going to take away another one of All Elite's advantages, is having bigger name stars to the general public. Because if they want to, they could just say, well, hey, Cena might show up. They've got a deep bench with the parent company. That's the thing is All Elite Wrestling, from what I've seen so far, they have one thing each show is better than most anything else that you see in other wrestling promotions, and a lot of other stuff makes you cringe, and they're not ready for primetime players. And then there's some guys that are good that they can work into good spots if they know what they're doing, and they'll probably get over. But the NXT show is up and down. There's nothing to be embarrassed of. And occasionally you'll see that some of these guys are really fucking good. And the TV show is together, and they've got a tremendous, yes, they're getting great marketing with, TNT and Turner Broadcasting, etc. But the WWE is a marketing machine, so they're going to get the word out about this program. So I'm just saying, if All Elite Wrestling would sign quality athletes instead of goofy indie darlings, they could very well compete. But the more of this silliness that they sign with the guys that stick their thumbs in their ass and wrestle the Invisible Man, they're wasting spots on the roster, they're wasting resources, and they're going to be wasting airtime trying to get the guy with his hands in his pockets over. My Little Dog Pockets is not going to be a star to the average audience on TNT.
You don't think he's going to be on the cover of TV Guide when they do the big AEW multi-cover special?
Well, if he is, then he'll also be on the cover of the Rise and Fall of AEW when WWE puts it out. They need to hide that shit and some more of that. At least the guy with no legs hadn't been back. They don't need to be that inclusive. As I mentioned on the program a few weeks ago, the Dallas Cowboys don't need to put the guy with no legs in the lineup just because it's always been his dream to play football. I've had a lot of dreams. Some of them involved spicy food beforehand, but I didn't want to actually fulfill all of them.
Did you hear what it says at the bottom of the AEW contract?
What's that?
Gobble, gobble, we accept you. We accept you.
Yeah, somebody was watching TCM last night.
Was it on last night? Actually was.
Well, actually, Stace had it recorded, so I'm not sure that. But and here's my fantasy booking. We're going to close the program with my fantasy booking because everybody always wants to know, what would it take to get you back in the wrestling business as a manager? What would it take to get you back in the WWE? Who would you want to manage if you went back? Blah blah blah. So the epiphany dawned on me the other day when I watched a couple of clips online, and then I watched the NXT show, and I've seen the All Elite stuff, and I've even said the MLW stuff and the NWA stuff I'm about to do. I came up with the one wrestler in history. Yes, of course, it's fantasy booking, so this guy's dead. But the one wrestler in history that I, as a manager, could make into the biggest money ball player in wrestling today, because there's nobody like him. There's nobody even approaching him, both in terms of his promo and his physical aura and his combination of strength and look and working ability and agility, because of the backstory that you could tell, because of the persona and the personality that he could carry off, and because of the ready-made opponents that we have in the biggest promotion in the world that could make more money than any other wrestling angle in history. You know, Brock Lesnar's in the WWE, and he's the only one that any of the wrestling fans take seriously as a money ball player because they know he's real, right? That's why Brock has been able to get this big money for the past several years, and why that he draws big money, because regardless of what you can say about wrestling, that guy's fucking real, and he's the only one, right? That's because it's not like Brock has good matches, but he doesn't have the best matches in recorded history of wrestling. But he's drawing and he's commanding this pay because of his name and his reputation, and because he's real. Would you agree?
I think that's a big part of it, sure.
Okay, and Paulie, because everybody now, especially even the minions that, and I always call him Paulie affectionately, but Paul Heyman, even his fans and his minions know that in a worked, and they're the ones that know wrestling is more of a work than anything else, but in a worked business, they know that Paulie on screen is very close, and especially with some of his manipulations. There's a lot of truth there, right? It's like he's the nature boy Ric Flair of Jewish managers. If anything, sometimes he's toned down instead of toned up on television. They know that there's realness about Paul. And they know that there's a realness about me because, after all, since this is fantasy booking, let's imagine that, well, we don't have to imagine. I don't give a fuck about the wrestling business anymore. I don't give a fuck who knows it. I don't give a fuck about anybody in the wrestling business, and I don't give a fuck what they think of me. That's pretty legitimate, right? Except I care about the image of the business and the credibility and the idea of the wrestling business. But today's business, most of it gives me gas. So people would naturally, point I'm saying, if I came in as some type of asshole who had a grudge against the wrestling business, it would be believable, right?
Yes, it would be very believable.
Do you know what wrestler that I would take to face Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship with me and my old friend Happy Heyman, the Jovial Jew, in opposite corners, where people could believe, because they not only they own all the footage, they could tell the story not only of the original Midnight, but they could tell the story of Smoky Mountain Wrestling and ECW. These two guys were mirror images of each other, the bizarro world opposites. They operated their own promotion, one Southern, one Northern. There was this giant rivalry. They could build this thing up, right? But who's going to face Brock Lesnar in the ring? Who could we make from wrestling history? Could we make people believe was even tougher, meaner, crazier, and more dangerous than Brock Lesnar? I would want to manage Joe LeDuc against Brock Lesnar.
Interesting.
Because think about this. What are we missing in wrestling? All the guys on NXT, all the guys in the WWE, all the other promotions. There are guys that we know are tough. Filthy Tom Lawler's in MLW. He was 10-6 in the UFC. That's pretty fucking good. That's a major professional athlete. But he's not as scary as Joe LeDuc. He could fucking kill you, but you wouldn't be as scared while he was killing you as you would be if Joe LeDuc was killing you. Nobody looks like a fucking lunatic. Nobody looks like just some dangerous, middle-aged, crazy lunatic that would pull your fucking eyeballs out anymore, that would go, now that everybody knows it's a work especially, that would go against the fucking script, as they say, that would go into business for themselves, that didn't give a fuck whether they got sued or not. Can you imagine in this day and age, if 1978 Joe LeDuc showed up? Now, I'm not talking about the babyface from Florida in the early 70s. I'm not talking about the guy in the mid-80s and he had a little run underneath in the WWF at the end of his career because he was already past 40 and he had health issues. He had diabetes. That's why he died young. I'm talking about 1978 fucking 36-year-old Joe LeDuc that did the blood oath in Memphis and had those matches with Lawler, that did the shit with the fucking Stomper in Knoxville with the sledgehammer. He got put in the fucking hospital and then chased him out of the building with a fucking axe. This guy, go and look on YouTube. I know I'm not saying you've seen it a million times, but anybody out there, if you haven't seen 1978 Joe LeDuc, go to YouTube and look up Joe LeDuc Memphis Blood Oath. Go look up the promo that he did when he came back in 81 to fight Lawler one more time, and he broke the fucking glass ashtray jar over his fucking head.
That's the best one, because it doesn't break the first time, and he goes,
yeah,
I've got a maid, she can clean up, and then he hits himself, and it doesn't break, and he's like, she can clean up all this, and he does it the second time. And it wasn't a fucking baked bottle or a gimmick piece of glass they were shooting at in the corner of a fucking hotel lobby, and he picks up the old glass sand-filled ashtray that they used to have and breaks it over his fucking head. And he begins bleeding everywhere. Those promos. And in the ring, he could show his strength. He was like Dr. Death. He didn't have any muscles, but he's 6 feet tall and he's 280 pounds, and he had that barrel chest and those huge legs. But he could show his strength. He's the first guy I ever saw do a press slam. And especially Bill Dundee at 212, 215. He'd left hand around Dundee's throat, and the right hand would just go between his legs and grab the ass of Dundee's tights, and he'd put him up without Dundee posting. And when he threw Lawler in Memphis, he put him up on top of his head like Andre used to and walked toward the ropes, and the idea was that he would throw Lawler over the top rope without Lawler touching anything, and Lawler would do a splash on the big, heavy oak table at ringside in Memphis that they used for years and years until Jackie Fargo broke the legs off of it to use in a match one night. But it was 10 feet away, and Lawler was 230, and fucking LeDuc picked him up, took 2 or 3 steps and launched him, and he threw him 9 feet. And that's when Lawler hit the side of the fucking desk and took the bump, and it looked even more vicious. It looked like he just tried to kill the man. People that were there that night in Memphis that saw that live said that's the only time they'd ever seen one human being try to kill another one in person. Because there was no way you could figure out how the fuck that was supposed to go, and it didn't go like it was supposed to. But he was strong enough to throw a 230-pound man 9 of 10 feet, right? He could show his strength, but at the same time, he could do drop kicks from a standing position. He'd have a stare-off with a guy, and all of a sudden, he'd jump up, boom, both feet in the fucking face. He could take a big backdrop, but he wouldn't take it from anybody, because on the underneath matches, you'd be lucky to get him off his feet. If he was there as a heel to get over and beat the fuck out of some people, that's exactly what he'd do. But in the main event with Lawler for the Southern title, in that comeback, he'd take a backdrop almost as big as Lawler's. Because he would, some guys, when you're taking a backdrop off of them, you just match and you take your best backdrop. Lawler always took a good backdrop, but he had a different way of doing it. He'd go in kind of sideways, bend over, and then fucking be flung, and it was a different form.
LeDuc was his best backdropper because he was so strong and had such a base, he could fling Lawler up to where he was literally 3 or 4 feet higher than LeDuc's head when he was standing up. So just that backdrop would look so impressive. Point is, the guy could work. He could look like he was killing you and never feel it. He could take bumps. He could move. He knew what the fuck he was doing when he was getting heat as a heel. And most importantly, not only on his promos, not only even with a close-up television camera in his face, but in person, in the arenas, he could convince you that he was a fucking lunatic. And you were scared of him even when I was a photographer. And I'd been around for a few years. I was pretty sure that Christine Jarrett nor nobody would let the fucking wrestlers, like beat the fuck out of me, right? But still, you went up to Joe LeDuc, and once that I kind of, was around him a couple times and he realized I was kind of halfway smart, that was fine, but you would approach him differently than you did the other guys when he was a heel. He had that aura. And the week after the Blood Oath, he comes to Louisville and he calls me over. Hey, picture boy, because he had the accent, right? French Canadian. Hey, picture boy, come here. Take a picture of my arm. And he holds his arm out and I'm pulling the camera up to my face because I'm like, I'll do anything you say. But when I saw the arm, I couldn't help it. I was like, oh, shit, what happened? He said, just take the picture. Yes, sir. Right? And I've still got that picture of you could lay your middle finger in the fucking gash, and he didn't have it stitched, of the meat of his arm that he had cut with that fucking axe blade to get a fucking angle across, right? This is the way we do it in the lumber camps. The only thing I would change, I don't know that the lumberjacks are the most feared population these days, especially after I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. We sleep all night and we work all that type of thing. But you go back and look at that footage of Joe LeDuc and the way he talked and the way he looked and those eyes and the aura he had and the power of the bear hug where the 10 marks could not separate his bear hug grip. That was always a shoot. It's a strongman trick. There's a trick to it, but still, it's a strongman trick. It's not a fucking schlub off the street trick. He could get 10 guys out of the audience at random, 5 on each side. They couldn't pull his bear hug apart. He could hold the fucking car back with his legs and his back to a concrete wall till the tires were spinning. He could break the shit over he could do all that shit, right? Imagine that Jim Cornette came in and announced to Happy Heyman and everybody else in the WWE that he had found a guy that had started out as a bouncer in Montreal at the cheap clubs and the dive bars, but had fallen in with the Montreal mob and had become an enforcer for them and ended up in a fucking fight in a attempted strong arm deal, had killed a man with his the only thing is, bless him, Bruiser couldn't talk like LeDuc and he sure couldn't work like LeDuc. He was stronger even, but he didn't have those other things. But what if I said that he went to prison because in one of these strong arm deals he crushed a man with his bear hug. He broke so many of his ribs they punctured the guy's lungs and he fucking died. He went to prison. And in prison, he was the champion fighter. That's where he got that scar down his stomach, the scar that LeDuc had down his stomach. And I heard a story that it was some fucking thing that he was actually a babyface in where somebody cut him when he was trying to break something up or whatever the fuck. But it was a foot long and the scar part was an inch wide down his midsection. You couldn't see it real good with all the hair until you got up close. and the scar, his head looked like Abdullah the Butcher's from the blade jobs when he was bald or when he had just the stubble cut. And so this guy was the fucking toughest man in prison. He ran things in there and that's where he, fucking has been for the last however long until now. He realizes that his time is short and he wants to make as much money as possible. And so he's come to the WWE to take down Brock Lesnar and win the WWE championship and get all these millions of dollars a year. And woe unto any motherfucker that sets foot in his path. And then whoever it is, you sacrifice your whole fucking roster because fuck it. We're going for goddamn a sellout, a worldwide pay-per-view. He beats the fuck out of and beats flat in the middle everybody on the roster up to Brock. And then that's when you have, and Brock would be up to the task, and LeDuc wouldn't give a shit, and especially if he was at that age. And I think we would have a few hard ways, and we'd have some juice, and we'd have Brock trying to pull out the shooting star, and LeDuc taking the big backdrops and him suplexing each other all over the goddamn ring. And I believe you could make $100 million fucking dollars off of something like that, because there's nobody like that in wrestling today. You're not legitimately scared of anybody, whether you know it's a work or not. Nobody looks not physically fit, but huge and old. And I mean, LeDuc, he was scary physically, but he didn't have a fucking bicep. But yet he could fucking pick people up over his head and hold cars back. He just had a unique body type. He just looked like a goddamn monster. He could have been Tor Johnson in the fucking movies. He was uglier and meaner and stronger. Nobody looks like that. Jericho's 46 and he still dresses and acts like he's 28. I want a 40-year-old fucking big, hairy, mean, scarred up, psychopathic, scary motherfucker that looks like that he would break me in fucking pieces and pick his teeth with my bones. We don't have that anymore, do we? Who is it?
No, we don't have anyone that seems like a real scary, menacing guy, like in a promo. And the other thing is, everyone is so much smaller, it seems like, when they get into the business nowadays.
Yeah, and once again, with just some full-grown adult men would be nice that you could be intimidated by, but a fucking monster, and not a monster in just in terms of size. Like I said, he was 6 feet tall and 280. But a monster in terms of, are you scared when you see this motherfucker coming down the street at you in the dark? And would Joe LeDuc have scared you if you had no idea who he was? And you're walking down a dark street and here comes that fucking guy. What would you do?
I would be a little scared, especially if he opened his mouth and said anything.
Yes. And just you should see him. I've got a picture of him with a little fan's little dog when he was a babyface in Knoxville. And when he was talking about, because he had kids, and I believe he was showing a picture of one. He could have the nicest smile, but when he went out in front of people and he turned that on, and that deathly stare with the wide eyes, I took a picture of him posed in the ring one night. He sees me with the camera and he walks over towards me, and he's got the eyes, right? The eyes are open, and I've got goosebumps right now. And I think he's wanting me to take the picture, right? Because he's standing there looking at me. So I take the picture, and when I put the camera down, he's still looking at me. And he's still looking at me. He's not moving. And I got up and moved away. I walked down the other side of the fucking ring. And the people saw it, and that's what he was going for too. But he intimidated me to take his picture and then leave him the fuck alone. And I was smart. That's what we don't have, ladies and gentlemen, in the business anymore. We need to look for one, because one would make $1 million. If you could find a lunatic, scary, mean-looking, dangerous, psychopathic, don't give a fuck motherfucker that could work and talk, that's what we need.
And then when they ban you from ringside, Paul LeDuc comes up from out of the ring, from underneath the ring, and jumps in there and takes care of stuff.
Anyway, I encourage everybody, find you some heel Joe LeDuc from the 70s on YouTube and tell me I'm wrong. And otherwise, you're not going to be able to tell me I'm wrong until next week, because I'll be down in Atlanta this weekend. So we're going to be doing the On the Bus, everything you've always wanted to know about what I thought about All In, All Out, until it's all over. And next week, the experience starts on Fridays, so we can start covering the Wednesday Night Wars and all that and so much less. Until then, in parting, you can bet your last money it's all going to be a stone gas, honey. I'm Don Cornelius, and in parting, we'd like to wish you love, peace, and soul.